Welcome, everybody, to the Art of Healing with your hosts, Dr. Judy Jasek of Animal Healing Arts and Matt Rowe of ParsleyPet. During our show, we are talking about your pet's health, raw feeding, and alternative treatments for cancer, unexplained illnesses, and supporting your pet's natural ability to heal. Welcome, Dr. Judy, to this week's show.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute riot, and it's springtime and flowers are growing and kind of everything's coming around. And before the show, we were talking about your garden and everything that's available on this planet to heal your dog. And so what we were kind of talking about is having a show today about helping your dog with an upset stomach. And so what
we see it a lot. We see it a lot in dogs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of upset stomachs in dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. Even this morning when I was walking Leo, it was almost as if he was a cow grazing along and eating all the crabgrass he could as we were going for a walk. So what types of things do you like to use as herbals for settling an upset stomach? Or if you're noticing bowel movements are not as solid as they should be, and they may have diarrhea or something else kind of coming on where you kind of intuitively may know that something is wrong, and also I want to approach the subject of, what do you look for? When do I know I should go see a vet, or when do I know that I can treat it with natural herbal supplements that are available?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I wanted to say that plants have amazing healing abilities. There is so much available out there in the plant world that can help. This is how plants, it's their own survival mechanisms. It's how plants live out in the wild and don't succumb to disease. And they even, have chemicals that repel insects and all of these really cool natural mechanisms for their own survival. So when we ingest the plants, we are taking advantage of those survival mechanisms. And so it is a special interest of mine to grow not only food, but herbs culinary herbs, but also medicinal herbs. So it's a big interest of mine, and it's really fun. So it's something I'm always learning about. But yeah, for our dogs, so tummy aches are really common. Dogs are natural scavengers. They're going to be out there picking stuff up, especially in the spring. I think the grass is growing and there's all kinds of new smells, and they're always out there exploring with their mouths and their noses, and puppies especially will be out eating all kinds of stuff. So it's not unusual for them to get an upset stomach. So when is it severe? When is it like, okay, we're going to the ER now, and when can you manage it at home? And I can give you some suggestions on a couple like real simple remedies to have at home, just to have on hand. And so the main thing is, what's your pet's general attitude like? Like, say your vet or your pet has vomited a couple of times, but they're still acting good. They got good energy. They're still bouncing around. Still want to go for a walk. They just, threw up a couple times. Probably just got into something, irritated their stomach a little bit. And this is their body's way of resolving it. When a dog vomits, a lot of times there's just something in the stomach that doesn't belong there. And this is their way of eliminating it. So a really great home remedy for that is ginger. And so this is, ginger root. And what I recommend is making a ginger tea. So you can get the fresh root at the store and just pour some boiling water on a couple pieces of ginger root, let it cool. And you can either pour it on your pet's food, or if your pet isn't eating, you can give it to them directly, like with an eyedropper, or if you happen to have a little syringe. And the thing about not eating too is it really is fine if your pet misses a meal or two. They are not going to starve. They could go days literally without eating. But sometimes that fast, like just skipping a meal or two, is exactly what their body needs. The body just needs a little rest. The digestive tract cannot rest and heal unless they stop consuming, because every time they eat, the digestive tract has to work to digest the food. So if it doesn't get that little bit of a break, then it's not going to be able to heal as well. So if your pet's still wanting to eat, then I usually recommend make the meals a little smaller. Like if they vomited a couple times, feed them just half of a normal meal, put some of the ginger tea on, and see if that helps. And that's very settling for the stomach. Ginger tea also helps with car sickness. If you have a pet that tends to get nauseous in the car, you can give them a little bit of ginger tea before. And I think the tea is probably one of the easiest ways to give it. The ginger root or the spice is pretty strong tasting. So a lot of pets are not going to like that. Signs of concern are if your pet is vomiting multiple times. I mean, like several times an hour, like almost like nonstop, like every 20 or 30 minutes. Oh, your pet's throwing up again. And, or they're very painful. Like this would be a dog that's all like hunched up and their belly hurts. You go to touch them in their belly and they're just miserable. I mean, you just look them in the face and just know they're just miserable. That would be a time to take them in because we want to rule out some sort of blockage. Any kind of blockage in the intestines or something like pancreatitis, which is very severe. Those are very painful conditions. So looking for that pain. If your pet's still, pretty active, like I said, wanting to go for walks, wanting to interact with the family, they don't have that degree of pain, then you can probably try treating it at home for at least 24 hours. And then you see what happens. If it signs progress and starts getting worse, then of course, you do want to, take them in. If they have, say, a loose stool, where, and again, we're looking at levels of this. So if a pet has loose stool, but they're still acting good, they're still wanting to go for walks, oftentimes still wanting to eat, then we can treat it symptomatically. A little bit of pumpkin added in to the diet can help. So pumpkin helps regulate gut motility. Whenever there's diarrhea, what's going on, there could be lots of different causes of this, but fundamentally it's because what the pet's eating is moving through the gut too fast. So what happens is the food gets down into the colon and then it should sit there, and the colon's job is to reabsorb the moisture, and then we have a nice formed stool. When the gut is irritated and things are moving through too fast, then we have diarrhea. But again, just like the vomiting, this isn't always a bad thing because sometimes the pet ate something that they need to eliminate. And so this is the body's way of saying, hey, this doesn't belong in here. Let's kick this out. So they'll go through a little mini detox. So a little bit of pumpkin can help slow down that gut motility. Slippery elm is another really great herb. It's very mucilaginous, which means it forms kind of a coating, and it helps calm the gut and soothe the stomach. So those are probably the two main go-tos for a symptomatic diarrhea. That would be the pumpkin and the slippery elm. And again, if your pet has some diarrhea and just doesn't really feel like eating, then, go ahead and, let them fast for a meal or two. Sometimes that will be, just the ticket. Now, things with diarrhea to watch out for are copious amounts of blood. So a few drops of blood in the stool are not a big concern if the pet is otherwise acting okay. That means there's a little bit of irritation in the colon, and that goes along with, the gut's a little bit irritated, it's a little bit inflamed. If your pet's like goes to poop and there's a puddle of blood, that's a time to take them in. If we're, if they're producing significant amounts of blood, that would be another time to get them in, get them checked. And what? Sometimes we need to do some conventional medications just to kind of get them over the hump. And then we can go back to the herbal support for the long-term care.
Now, and this is something that I heard growing up as a kid, and I've heard it from multiple people. If a dog has diarrhea, you give them rice. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts?
yeah, I'm not big on the on grains in general.
Right.
And as we've talked about, the grain crops are very contaminated with chemicals these days.
Mhm.
Rice is known to have a high arsenic level. It does make the diet more bland because you're kind of making it a lower protein, lower fat diet just because you're
Right.
diluting out the meat-based products. But again, I would go back to just feed a smaller quantity, feed like half of a normal meal, add in some bone broth. That's another really great thing to do. Bone broth is high in collagen, which is very
Mhm.
healing for the gut, healing for the stomach. This is actually something you could do for the vomiting too. Matter of fact, you could make a ginger tea with bone broth instead of water. That just heat your bone broth, pour that over the ginger
Yep.
root, and then see if your pet would drink that, because then you're getting
Yeah.
healing from a couple of different angles there.
Mhm.
So like warming the food, like we talk a lot about a raw diet. I recommend
Mhm.
a raw diet. If the pet's still wanting to eat,
Sure.
then heat up some bone broth, feed a small meal, pour some bone broth over it, so it's real soupy.
Mhm.
It's more dilute, and then do that. And if the pet doesn't want to eat their regular diet, then just let them go a meal or two without eating,
Mhm.
and sometimes that helps the healing. What I don't recommend is don't just keep trying different things to get them to eat, because then sometimes the pet will
Yeah.
eat something that they shouldn't. A
Right.
lot of people get nervous when their pets miss a meal or two, and they're fully designed to be able to handle that, and
Mhm.
sometimes that's the best thing for them.
Well, if you think about from a scavenger basis, I've heard that it is a feast or famine in some criteria. So when they reintroduced the
Mm-hmm.
wolves into Wyoming, a wolf may go 2, maybe 3 days before bringing down another elk, where they feast on the elk, and then they may go a couple more days before they eat. And then anything they come upon is really just from a scavenger basis. It's opportunistic, like blueberries, raspberries, a rabbit, things like that,
Mm-hmm. Right.
to where
Exactly.
it is absolutely okay for them to go. So when should I be concerned? So I've let my dog go for 2 days now. They haven't eaten. They don't show interest in eating. Should I extend that out to 3 days necessarily? Or then at that point, should I get my vet involved in this conversation?
I would say if you go beyond, if you get to that third day and the pet still
Mhm.
isn't showing any interest, and this is still, if they're acting pretty good, they're just not wanting to eat, you could probably go to that third day. But I'd say by the time you're on that third day, if the main symptom is not
Mhm.
eating, then I would say probably get them in and get them checked. But then again,
Okay.
you're still looking for these other parameters, the abdominal pain, the passing any
Mhm.
blood, really lethargic. If they're just,
Yep.
oh, they're laying around, they don't want to move, they don't want to get up, they're not interacting with the family, they're not wanting to go for walks, then that's
Mhm.
pretty serious. When you have a sorry, my phone keeps ringing. When you have a significant um, behavioral change like that, that's always a time to get them in and get them checked.
And you know what? And I think that's why it's really important as a pet parent, we're around our pets a lot, and especially with the pandemic and the quarantine and everything that's going on. I'm around both of my pets almost, not, I wouldn't say 24/7, but I'm with them majority of the day. So I am observant to, are they sleeping a little bit more? Are they asking for food earlier? Are they not eating? So, and that's something that we need to share with our veterinarian, because our vets, I mean, Dr. Judy, you're not at our house hanging out, observing all of Leo's issues and all of his, everything that happened since his injury, but we do. And so I think as an opportunity, as a pet parent, we should step into being able to help support our vets along with that information that we're receiving based upon that day-to-day interaction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's really important. I always give that a great deal of value, what is being noticed at home and what has changed. So what's normal for the pet and what's different, because, animals are very much creatures of habit. They typically get on a schedule. They like to stay on a schedule. And so when that changes dramatically, then, something's up. It doesn't mean something super serious, but it definitely something we want to pay attention to. And, keep a little log. If your pet starts acting a little bit off, keep a little journal for a couple of days, and then you have everything in writing. So if you do have to take your pet into the vet, sometimes it's hard to remember everything, especially now with the curbside drop-offs where you don't actually get to go in and interface directly with the veterinarian. You're talking to them on the phone, you're concerned about your pet. So if you have things, written down, you're taking notes, then you have more concise information to pass on to them.
So after I make a ginger tea, so, let's say Leo is my dog, and let's say Leo's got an upset stomach, and I give him ginger tea to help settle it down. After that, is there something else I could do for him that would help support him after we have dealt with that immediacy of the upset stomach? Is there something like cleansing the liver, or is there something on that other side? What else could I do in conjunction with the ginger tea?
I would say if he goes right back to normal and is acting fine, then there's probably nothing else that you need to do. And maybe, another good topic for another show would be detoxing, because that's something that I think is beneficial on a somewhat regular basis. I don't think we have to be detoxing all the time, but there's a lot of chemicals in our environment. So doing a periodic detox can be beneficial. But I think if they get right back to their regular routine, back to eating, back to, acting normal, then it's probably not necessary. Maybe just some, like I said, a couple of smaller meals with maybe a little extra bone broth, just to make it a little easier on their digestion. But there isn't any need to even radically change the diet. You're of course going to hear a lot of things that, the raw food is bad for them, and that's, causing the upset stomach and all that. But I think feeding smaller amounts, making sure that you're warming it, providing plenty of moisture is probably all that's going to be necessary.
Got it. So something that's very just simple for them to digest, very similar to us. I mean, when we get upset stomachs, last thing we want to eat is this big meal or a big rich meal with, heavy creams and heavy sauces. So really for our pets is really kind of sticking with that same meal format, because it's settling with their stomach, but just decreasing the amount that you do feed. So you're giving the stomach a little bit of time and a little bit of ability to actually absorb what's coming in and the ability to digest that small amount.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So where else should I be paying attention to? So upset stomach, is there anything else that I should be looking for or watching for, or anything like that could potentially lead to something bigger? Or, educate the audience on things that they should watch for before they call you.
Yeah, so a great thing to get used to checking on your pet is mucous membrane color. And this is the gum color. So you're going to pick up their lip and look at the gum color. And it should be nice, bright pink. Now, in some dogs, they have pigment because they have dark pigment, because especially like multicolored dogs. So that's just their pigment. So you want to find an area that's pink and get used to what that looks like normally on your dog, because if they're sick, that membrane color will change, on the very dramatic side. Like if your dog, say got hit by a car, was in shock, they'll go like white. Obviously, that's serious. You're going to take them in. If they have an internal bleeding, if they're losing blood internally that you can't see, the membranes are going to get very pale, like almost white. Another thing you want to do is push on the membrane. And when you push on it and you take your finger away, it's going to look white for a second because you've removed all the circulation. Should return to pink within just a second or two, very quick. If it's like 4 or 5 seconds, that usually indicates more serious dehydration. So if,
Okay.
say your pet has some vomiting and diarrhea and you do that, little test, and it's like, 3, 4, or 5 seconds for that color to come back into the gums, that's a sign your pet might be getting dehydrated. So that would be something else to look out for. And I guess that's another point that I didn't mention before. Your pet can go a couple days without eating, but they need to be drinking. If they're not drinking, then I would say, once you're beyond a day, once you're beyond 24 hours, if they're not drinking anything at all, that'd be a time to get them in, because we don't want them to get dehydrated. So they can go without eating. They cannot go without drinking. And so the membrane will help you determine that. Again, we talked about, lethargy, not wanting to move around, breathing patterns. If your pet's painful or distressed in any way, a lot of times they will pant, unusually. Like obviously a pet will pant when they're hot, they're out exercising on a warm day, they're going to pant. Well, that's normal. They're laying around the house and they're panting, or they can't get comfortable. If they're just kind of not feeling good, they should probably just go curl up and go to sleep and just rest. It's like what we do when we're not feeling good. You just want to go curl up in bed and take a little nap. And that's what they should be doing. If they can't get comfortable, they're moving around, lay down, get up, lay down, get up. That's not normal. That's a sign of discomfort. So those would be some other things to look for that at least you can make note. And if you do end up taking your pet in, those are things that would be valuable to tell your veterinarian.
Okay. Well, this has been incredible. I mean, when you look at so much, and especially with spring coming out now, your dog is running around, they're scavenging, they might be eating things you don't want them to eat, other dogs poop, goose poop, you name it. And at some case, your dog could get an upset stomach. And so really by taking the ginger tea, hot water, make sure you cool it before you give it to your dog, but it's good ginger tea. And then what you would also mention is, making it out of bone broth and making that ginger tea with the bone broth to help settle their stomach.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Is this the reason they eat crabgrass or the grasses like around my garden?
I think pets do sometimes do a little self detox, where they might eat stuff, like they have a little upset stomach and then they might eat something that actually encourages them to vomit, because then they they feel better afterwards. I think there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing there too. Are they getting sick because they're eating the grass, or are they eating the grass because they're getting sick? But I think a lot of times, they don't feel good. They'll go eat some grass and it just kind of helps purge what's in their system. Because, dogs pick up all kinds of stuff. And as closely as we think we watch our pets, we really don't know everything that they're picking up out there in the world, because they get their noses down in the ground all the time.
Yeah. Even just random stuff that's around our house that my kids leave on the floor. The dog decides, wow, that has something on it I want to eat. So necessarily it's not food, but you're trying the best you can to try to keep those objects that they're not supposed to be eating away from them. But like you just said, they're curious and they explore with their mouths.
Yeah, right. They're like babies, constantly, putting stuff in their mouths. They sniff and they can smell stuff, that we can't smell. So, crumbs, I know. I mean, the kids have been out of school for a while now, but, when I would walk my dogs and you find all kinds of stuff, snacks and all kinds of stuff laying on the ground that kids drop walking back and forth to school and stuff like that. And a little bit of that may not harm them, but you just never know when something's going to give them a little bit of a tummy ache.
Yeah. Well, there's a really good remedy. Thank you so much for explaining this and going through it. So what is the best way somebody can get a hold of you, Dr. Judy?
Well, my website, my business name is Animal Healing Arts. My website is ahavet.com. ahAvet.com. My email is info@ahavet.com. And my phone number is 720-515-2421.
I highly recommend that if you guys have any questions at all, consult with Dr. Judy. Take the 15 minutes with her, spend a little bit of money, and have that conversation, because she's so brilliant in regards to all these different modalities that can actually keep your dog out of a vet long term and can actually help appease possibly something that's really simple to fix, so you don't have to be worried as much. So thank you guys very much for watching the show today. You can always follow us at ParsleyPet.com and follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out the nutritional blueprint, because this is an area where you can find out exactly if you're feeding your puppy correctly and know exactly what supplements that you should be addressing or which ones that you should remove. So thank you guys very much for being a part of the show today. And thank you again, Dr. Judy, for another awesome episode.
Thank you, Matt. Happy to be here.
All right. We'll talk to everyone soon.
Bye.
Bye.